Reviewing bowl season in college football here at SBRForum Videos. I'm Peter Loshak. We're talking right now with Joe Duffy from OffshoreInsiders.com, one of my favorite returning guests. Joe, thanks for being with us.
Peter, you're my absolute favorite host there. No, I fibbed. I think that Natalie young lady's my favorite anchor there, but you're my second favorite.
Oh, she's something else. All right, quickly tell us about OffshoreInsiders.com in about 15 seconds, so we got to get to these bowls. So that's what people are wanting to hear.
All right, OffshoreInsiders.com, perhaps the only website where we can trace our roots back to the old scorephone days. Long before that, some of your favorite scorephone handicappers led by me, Joe Duffy of God's Tips, are at OffshoreInsiders.com. Hopefully that took less than 15 seconds.
Yeah, okay, great. Thanks. All right, let's get right into it. Poinsettia Bowl is the first bowl we're going to talk about today. It's BYU San Diego State. This is in San Diego, so maybe San Diego State gets a home field advantage here, maybe not. Not quite sure. These two teams do have a very close relationship in terms of the coaching staffs. Mendenhall knows the San Diego State defensive schemes better than anyone in the country, maybe, and it's a very competitive line. BYU's a 2.5-point favorite here. Total is 48.5. It opened at 49.5. People are expecting maybe kind of a low-scoring, rough and tumble game. I'm thinking maybe BYU has the planning and the talent to be able to get a win here. I'm thinking maybe you're going to say BYU minus 2.5 is a play.
You are correct, and the first point that you brought up is very important, that this is, without question, a home game for San Diego State. We very much take that into consideration, not just home games, but even some of the other games that we're going to talk about and some of the games that we won't talk about, but that I will handicap. I do look to see how far a team's traveled, to see if they have a regional advantage, and although there's no doubt about it that this is a home game for San Diego State, and they are 6-1 straight up at home, that is superseded by the fact that BYU is one of those teams that definitely has a deceptive record. 4 of their 5 losses this year were impressive losses. We've always said that the single most overrated statistic when it comes to sports handicapping is won-loss records, because won-loss records can be very deceptive, especially when you're handicapping the point spread. Now, keep in mind that the Cougars this year, 4 of their 5 losses were by 6 points or fewer, and the schedule maker wasn't kind as far as putting their toughest games back-to-back. They lost at their rival Utah, which is a tough game. Then they played a short week. Then he played a Thursday night game at Boise State. He wound up losing both of those games back-to-back. Then they played a pretty tough Oregon State team. Now, granted, not a fantastic team, maybe a team they could have beaten, should have beaten, played them very closely. Then after that loss, they took Notre Dame down to the wire. So when you actually scratch the surface, you see that BYU is a team that's more talented than the record states. Also, one of those huge myths we talked about during Rivalry Week, how although the public generally likes to bet favorites, one of the few circumstances where the public leans towards underdogs is they like to say in a rivalry, go with the underdog, especially a big underdog. That's a myth. One of the single biggest myths you're going to hear in bowl season is handicappers who say, I like to bet on the team that was hotter going into the postseason. That is false. We found out that if anything, just the opposite is true, but without question, it's not an edge. It's either a wash or you go in the opposite direction. And that's simply because the long break between the end of the regular season and the postseason hurts the hotter team. So, yeah, I know that San Diego State did close the season very strong. They started out the season 1-3 straight up. If the bowls were played a week after the regular season, we would lean maybe towards San Diego State here, but the break came at the wrong time for them. They peaked at the wrong time because the break is going to hurt them. So BYU, with the close losses, they're much better than the record says. So you were right, Peter. I am going with the more talented team and the team with the deceptive record, BYU.
I'm kind of agreeing with you. There's nothing much more to say. Joe Duffy, thanks so much. Great preview.